Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Lions fans, let us start with the difficult conversation before we get to the genuinely good news. Because the Terrion Arnold situation has forced this entire fan base to confront something uncomfortable about the 2024 draft class, and that conversation deserves to be had honestly rather than swept under the rug. Look at this class as a whole. Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw. And the honest truth here is that there was no realistic way Brad Holmes could have predicted any of this when these picks were made. This was, by every reasonable evaluation standard at the time, a genuinely good draft class on paper. The reason this stings so much is the context surrounding it. Holmes was coming off two of the greatest draft classes this organization has produced in the modern era. Look at the 2022 class. Kirby Joseph and Malcolm Rodriguez as the two headline names, but even James Houston flashed real ability in that group. Then 2023 happened, which stands as an absolutely legendary draft class by any measure. And then came 2024, which is where the problems began. Here is the honest, difficult truth about championship roster building that deserves real acknowledgement. If an organization can string together three genuinely great draft classes in a row, the competitive window essentially takes care of itself. The Lions came close to doing exactly that. But close is not the same as actually doing it. Nobody could have known Terrion Arnold would not just underperform on the field, but become embroiled in a genuinely serious legal situation. Nobody could have predicted Ennis Rakestraw would struggle this significantly to simply stay healthy. Giovanni Manu has not worked out the way the organization hoped. Sione Vaki remains a genuine question mark, though there is still real reason for optimism there. Christian Mahogany has emerged as arguably the player saving this entire draft class from being viewed as a complete miss, having developed into a legitimate, reliable starting caliber lineman. But here is the important caveat that deserves emphasis before anyone fully writes off this entire class. This is not over yet. If Manu can find any kind of role or development path, even a modest one, that helps salvage the broader perception of this group. If Vaki can establish himself as a genuinely productive second or third option in the backfield, if the injured pieces of this class can return to health and contribute in any meaningful capacity, there remains a realistic path to looking back on this 2024 class with at least moderate satisfaction rather than outright disappointment. It is a long shot in some respects, but the door has not closed entirely. The comparison worth drawing here is to what the Seattle Seahawks just accomplished on their way to winning the Super Bowl. Look at how they built that championship roster. Devin Witherspoon and Jackson Smith-Njigba in one draft class. Then they followed that with another strong class the next year. Then they added Zach Charbonnet and continued building with that same level of consistency. That is the blueprint. You assemble multiple strong draft classes back to back to back, and that sustained talent accumulation is what ultimately produces championship caliber rosters. The Lions got remarkably close to that exact formula before the 2024 class introduced this current round of complications. It is a genuine bummer, but it is not a fair indictment of Brad Holmes' overall evaluation process or his track record as a talent evaluator. Sometimes the player development and the off-field circumstances simply do not break in your favor, regardless of how sound the initial evaluation appeared to be at the time. Now let us get to some genuinely encouraging news, because there is real depth available at the cornerback position both on this current roster and in the broader free agent market, which matters enormously given everything currently unfolding with Arnold. The veteran options worth genuine consideration include several names with real, demonstrated NFL production. Trevon Diggs brings talent but carries real injury concerns given his ankle history. Kenny Moore, turning 31, brings 9 years of professional experience and 111 career starts, exactly the kind of savvy veteran presence this organization has shown real success bringing in previously. Rasul Douglas, who was performing at a genuinely high level during his prime years with the Packers before a trade to Buffalo where his production did not translate as cleanly, stands at 6'2" and 200 pounds, a bigger frame than many fans realized, and brings real positional experience. Tre'Davious White also factors into this conversation as a name worth monitoring closely. There was even some lighter speculation about whether the Lions should pursue a trade for Denzel Ward, sparked specifically by the context of the Myles Garrett trade and the broader sense that the Cleveland Browns could be entering a genuine roster reset that makes some of their other established veterans available. The honest assessment here deserves real nuance. It is easy to simply say trade for him without grappling with the actual cost of acquiring a player like that. What specifically would the Lions have to surrender to make that kind of move happen? That is the harder and more important question that deserves real consideration before getting too attached to any single specific trade target. The genuinely good news in all of this is that the Lions have real organizational depth at cornerback already, plus a robust pool of available veteran free agents, which gives this front office real flexibility to address the suddenly uncertain Arnold situation without being forced into a desperate or rushed decision. There is also a genuinely interesting, if admittedly bittersweet, silver lining buried within the broader Arnold situation that deserves honest acknowledgement. Throughout this entire offseason, there had already been real organizational frustration building around Arnold specifically because of how much talk, public commentary, and bold statements he was making without the corresponding on-field performance to actually back any of it up. The defensive coaching staff had already begun internally pushing him toward a simpler standard. Stop talking, just play. There was a real sense throughout this offseason that significant coaching energy and organizational patience was already being specifically allocated toward getting Arnold to a baseline level of competent, professional performance, energy that, in a strange and admittedly uncomfortable way, might now be available to redirect elsewhere given how this situation has unfolded. None of that diminishes the seriousness of his current legal circumstances, which deserve to be treated with appropriate gravity regardless of any football-related silver linings. But from a pure roster management perspective, there is a genuine sense of needing to simply turn the page and move forward, redirecting organizational energy and patience toward players who are actually delivering results on the field. The Lions are reportedly handling this entire situation exactly the right way by not making any immediate or rushed roster decisions regarding Arnold's status. There is no pressing organizational need to release him immediately. The smart, measured approach is to simply wait, let the legal process play out as it needs to, and see how the actual situation develops over the next several weeks before training camp begins in earnest. The criminal charges are obviously extremely serious, and the optics surrounding this entire situation look genuinely bad regardless of how the legal proceedings ultimately resolve. But patience remains the correct organizational posture right now, particularly given that there are still several weeks before training camp activities genuinely ramp up. Now let us shift to something unambiguously positive, because Jameson Williams deserves a real, sincere apology from a significant portion of this fan base, including from people who were consistently skeptical of his development throughout his first several professional seasons. The persistent criticism and impatience that surrounded Williams for years, the constant questioning of what he would actually become and whether his speed alone would ever translate into consistent, reliable production has been thoroughly answered. He has now produced back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons that deserves significantly more recognition and celebration than it has received. What makes Williams' game so genuinely entertaining, beyond the pure statistical production, is the energy and personality he brings to every single play. The celebrations after catches, the obvious enthusiasm and joy he plays with, the almost spring-loaded readiness to explode the moment the ball arrives. This is a player who genuinely elevates not just the offensive production, but the entertainment value of watching this football team every single week. When you account for everything Williams brings to this offense, the broader picture of just how loaded this unit has become becomes genuinely staggering. The best wide receiver in the league, one of the best tight ends, a top-tier running back, a top-5 quarterback. And then, almost as an afterthought given everything else surrounding him, Williams himself, who is coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons and continues to be a critical, foundational component of this offense's overall explosiveness. Jared Goff's trust in Williams has become a genuinely fascinating storyline in its own right, because that trust occasionally cuts both ways. There are moments when Goff trusts Williams perhaps a bit too much, leading directly to turnovers when Williams was not actually as open as Goff perceived him to be in the moment. But that exact same trust also produces the kind of explosive 70-yard touchdown plays that fundamentally change the entire trajectory of a football game. The specific challenge in evaluating whether Williams is actually open on any given play deserves real understanding, because his game is built differently than a traditional possession receiver. When he is sprinting 30 yards downfield and running essentially even with a defensive back rather than already having created clear separation, he frequently does not look conventionally open in the way a route runner creating instant separation would look. The ball simply has to be thrown before that separation becomes visually obvious, with the expectation that Williams' pure speed will create that separation by the time the football actually arrives. It took Goff real time and real repetition to fully calibrate his trust and his timing specifically for that unique demand, but he has clearly figured it out at this point in their working relationship. The expectation heading into this season, with new offensive coordinator John DePasquale presumably building on what this offense already does well, is that Williams gets specifically and deliberately involved early and often in the game plan, with looks specifically designed around his exact skill set as an explosive vertical threat. That is exactly the right philosophy for deploying a player like Williams. Every single offensive coordinator in this league will tell you they value the quick strike, one or two play-scoring drive just as much as they value the long, sustained, methodical possession. Getting Williams involved early in a game, even with smaller, lower-risk touches initially, keeps him engaged, keeps the defense honest, and creates the conditions for those explosive plays to eventually materialize as the game progresses. There is also a real and underappreciated dimension to Williams' game beyond just the pure home run, big play speed threat that tends to dominate the broader conversation about him. When he is operating in the intermediate range of the field, catching a 12-yard gain and then turning on the afterburners to extend that into a 20-yard total gain, that specific skill set deserves significantly more recognition and celebration than it currently receives. The pure speed and the big play home run ability will always generate the most highlight reel attention, but that intermediate after the catch explosiveness represents another genuinely valuable dimension of what makes Williams such a dangerous offensive weapon heading into this season. When you step back and look at the totality of this Lions situation right now, the picture is genuinely complicated but not without real reason for optimism. The 2024 draft class has hit real, serious turbulence that nobody could have reasonably predicted at the time those selections were made. The cornerback room faces real uncertainty given the Arnold situation, but genuine organizational depth and a robust veteran free agent market provide real paths forward. And on the offensive side of the football, Jameson Williams has fully answered every legitimate question about his development, emerging as a genuinely critical and explosive component of one of the most loaded offensive units in the entire National Football League. Lions fans, the comments section is yours right now. Do you believe this 2024 draft class can still be salvaged given everything that has unfolded with Arnold, Rakestraw, and the rest of that group? Which veteran cornerback option, Trevon Diggs, Kenny Moore, Rasul Douglas, or Tre'Davious White, would you most want to see this organization pursue? And are you ready to fully buy into Jameson Williams as a legitimate top-tier receiver after back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons? Drop everything you have got in the comment section below. Make sure you are subscribed, and we will see all of you on the next one.